kırmızı olacak.
Very cultural name actually. They're Afghani in origin. I'm a Khan, by the way. So that's my I belong to the Nasa tribe. So I have a tribal kind of heritage which I'm very proud of. It hails from the northwest frontier of Pakistan. My name, if you like, my name, which is what I am known for, is Abu Eesa. Abu Eesa means father of Eesa. Some of the world's kind of Islamic seats of learning, such as Cairo, Pakistan, Medina Munawwara in Saudi, Nouakchott, which is in Mauritania, Maghrib, which is in Morocco. So alhamdulillah, I've got a nice kind of like a spread of the different cultures and the different people, the different thoughts, the madhahib. I've also studied Christian theology. I teach Christian and Islamic theology. And I'm one of the faith leaders at the religious community at Davos. I work with whomever. I'm the director of the first ethical charitable trust. I'm an imam in my community. I do a lot of lecturing and a lot of writing on Islam to Muslims and non-Muslims. This is a quick introduction to what I do. I have a lot of work. If you have time, you can go onto the internet and do some searching. There's a lot of lectures and things there. But that's it. In a nutshell, that is who I am.
Thank you very much. Edip?
Well, my name is Edip Yuksel. I was a Sunni until age about 30, and then I gave up following a sect. I know that Muhammad was not Hanafi or Shafi or Maliki or Shiite. He was a Muslim. I decided to become Muslim. Not Shia Muslim, not Sunni Muslim, not Hanbali Muslim. I decided to become Muslim by following the book, the only book brought by Muhammad, which Muhammad in the day of judgment that I learned from the book would complain that his ummah, his qawm have deserted. And وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّ إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. Oh my Lord, my people have deserted the Quran. When I realized that the Muslim ummah, 1 billion people, and have deserted the Quran, they became, unfortunately, the scum of the world, in many ways backward, illiterate, oppressive, and in many ways also becoming victim. And I learned that the reason is because they betrayed the Quran, the message of the Prophet Muhammad. And obviously this was not an easy decision, because when I accepted the message of the Quran, I knew that I will lose my popularity as a best-selling Muslim author in Turkey. I knew that my father would disown me, a prominent Sunni scholar. I knew that I will not have any more future in my country. And today's rulers in Turkey, they were my friends, they were comrades like Tayyip Erdogan or any one of the guys on top. We were together in the same organization to bring an Islamic theocracy. I say Islamic, I put in quote, because unfortunately the Islamic government of Iran is very un-Islamic, has nothing to do with Islam. The so-called Saudi Arabia is the enemy of Islam, and all these countries, so-called Muslim governments, and unfortunately they are farther from Islam than the so-called non-Muslim. I live in the United States, though I highly oppose its foreign policy, which is militaristic, which is imperialistic, and it is basically serving the interests of the military complex. However, I find it inside the country. I live in an Islamic state, exactly what Quran wants. فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. Whoever wants, let them believe, acknowledge. Whoever wants, let them disbelieve. You cannot have it in any so-called Muslim countries, that kind of freedom. And therefore, I thank God for that, and I want to finish it. Being in the United States, I was able to communicate the message of the Quran with people through internet and through conversations, and though I have written many Turkish books, but recently I wanted to show you, this is Quran Reformist Translation. This is basically a book, is questioning the Sunni and Shiite version of Islam, which is a betrayal of the Quran and the message of Prophet Muhammad. And here in this book, we discuss why we translate verses differently than traditional. We make an argument based on the Quran and reason which is also, unfortunately, together with the Quran, they trashed the Muslim population. And also in this book there are some appendices, but this is really, I encourage you to translate your languages. This has been translated into Arabic, Turkish, Italian, Russian, and inshallah at this time it's been translated. This is Manifesto for Islamic Reform. This is a powerful book because this is really a condensation of the message of the Quran and taking the message of the Quran out of the dirt that has been covered, layers of dirt, through piles of liturgy has been created by man. And thank you very much, and I would like to discuss. And this gentleman is a brave gentleman, and I am glad that having him because he has studied, he's a scientist, he reasons. I hope we'll be able to reason, and I hope that you, الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ, you follow this verse, they listen to the words, وَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَ, you follow the best. And this is a very mature group, and this, not only this group, the whole world, inshallah, watch this debate, and I hope that brother and me together, there's no hostility, we try to understand each other, we inshallah come into some agreement based on reason and the Quran. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the burning questions today in the Muslim world is one question. Is Quran all you need for religious instruction, or do we need Quran, Hadith and Sunnah? And this basically is going to form many of the questions that we have today. As Muslims, we are told by God to seek the truth and follow the straight path. We find in Quran 39:18, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, the one who listens to what is being said and then follows the best of it, these are the ones whom God has guided, and these are the ones who possess intelligence. So this is what we're aiming at. We want to see honest, straightforward answers to the questions on both sides of the issues, so that we who are seeking the truth can decide what is right. Based on this, I would like to introduce the topic. The topic will be Quran alone versus Quran, Hadith and Sunnah. Dr. Edip will speak on the Quran alone issue, and our Imam will speak on Quran, Hadith and Sunnah.
How many minutes you give initially?
I will ask the questions which have been prepared by our brothers here and sisters. Both panel members will take approximately 3 minutes on each question, and we'll try our best to stay within that 3 minutes. Otherwise, we won't get through very many questions. So I'd like both of you to respect the time if we can. If obviously it gets interesting, we'll stay a little bit longer, but basically trying to stay within that time period. We will start with the first question. Is the Quran sufficient to guide us, or do we need Hadith and Sunnah? Now I would like the Imam to make the first response.
The reason I find this question interesting is because if you were to ask this question to anywhere else in the entire world, geographically speaking, maybe there could be some discussion about the question. I was speaking to Raymond about this just earlier. We are in a part of the world which has effectively brought for us the Sunnah. We are in the part of the world, Central Asia, which historically, Samarkand, obviously not very far away, and Bukhara, and you all are very aware of the Imam Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari and Muslim ibn Hajjaj. These are the two greatest scholars of tradition of the preservation of the Sunnah. I say that only because as a side point, it makes me smile when I think of this question, and I thought if I was to be asked this question anywhere else, it would be, I need to answer it, you know, with evidences and so on. Here I'm awed. When I was flying into from Cairo into this, I could feel myself thinking this is where the world humbled itself to Islamic scholarship and the preservation of the statements of the Prophet, upon whom be peace. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, to give you just the direct answer to this question, says that إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْ الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. We have sent down upon you this reminder, this religion, this entire system. We are the ones who will preserve it. Allah refers to Himself in the plural, in the majestic sense, in the royal we. In this statement has established everything which we have seen today as we recognize as Islam. Now, have no doubt about the fact that today we have many different versions of Islam. People's own opinions have entered into Islamic thoughts. People have an idea, a belief, and so on. We're not talking about sects and groups at the moment. We're just talking about the sources. If I was to ask you a question and say to you that who are the ones that we listen to when it comes to understanding something, about anything? You go to the experts, right? The Quran itself was revealed upon the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace. And his companions were the experts of that time and have become the source for us when we go back and look to see what is the reality of what was revealed at that time. We know from the companions, the best group of people that have walked the face of this earth, those people who preserved the Quran, those people who preserved the Quran and taught all of the thousands of scholars that then spread it to regions such as this. So they were the ones who said that in this verse, in Surah Al-Hijr, has been the establishment of the Quran, of the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, and the teachings of Islam. Allah has not just protected this religion from the words of Himself, but He has also protected the words of the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace. وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. When the Prophet himself speaks, then he does not speak out of his own hawa. This cannot be referred to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never say to Himself that He speaks from hawa. So this is the Prophet's then teachings. These teachings have been preserved along with the statements of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are many actually evidences in the Quran itself which indicate that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent down the kitab wal hikmah, the additional aspects of the Quran. And in actual fact, I'll say one thing. I'll just say one. I'll end with this. I don't know how much. I don't want to be. I don't want. The last thing you ever want to do in debate is to get on the wrong side of the moderator. So let me say this. There is no way to understand the Quran without the Sunnah. If you want to understand the Quran, you have to have the commentary and the Sunnah to it. Without it, the Quran itself is then left to everyone to then decide what is right and wrong. And that's not good enough. The Quran is there for everyone to benefit from. But for everyone to say that this is what the Quran means and this is what the Quran doesn't mean, not any human being in their right mind would say that about any science. I cannot speak about the economic system that Sadiq is so proficient in. I cannot see, no, it's true. I can't. What do I know about the economic system that you studied for years and years and years? I can't speak about the law that you and your wife have studied. How can I even profess to understand what is going on? You go to the people who know the system. You cannot have any kind of area of knowledge and have anyone speaking about it as if they know. The Quran itself has a defined system which we understand. And I have no doubt that I agree with the good doctor that in recent years, more than recent years in fact, the various Muslim groups have taken a monopoly on the Quran, and they have derived teachings from it which are very, very far from the Quran. And that's why the verse that the doctor mentions, that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ will complain upon the Day of Judgment, that they have taken this kitab al-Mahjura, that they have taken this book and abandoned it, boycotted it. It is really 100% correct. There is a mass revival required amongst the Muslims. We have many problems that we need to sort out. We need to induce an intellectual revolution and a reform, but that does not mean that we destroy the sources of Islam. Rather, what we need to do is to destroy our prejudices, our ignorance, our misunderstanding. That's what needs to be destroyed. We need to return back to the sources with clean minds, pure hearts, and build again from the sources as they were built. Allahu Akbar.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Dr. Edip, I'll just repeat the question again. Is the Quran sufficient to guide us, or do we need Hadith and Sunnah?
The Quran says, the Quran guides you. The Quran says, the Prophet Muhammad delivered the Quran. The Quran says, it is mufassal, fully detailed. The Quran says, it is mubin, it is open. The Quran says, لقد يسرنا القرآن للذكر فهل من مدكر. We made the Quran easy to understand. Isn't there anyone who would understand? 4 times repeat. But our mullahs, clergymen, who want to be broker between you and God, who says, you need experts, you need me in order to understand God's word. Like Catholics, they ban people to read Bible. They said, you need us. We are the interpreter. You are the gate between you and God. He says, no, the Quran is not mufassal, is not detailed. The Quran is not mubin, is not obvious. The Quran is not easy to understand, as God says. These are all wrong. He says Sunnah of Muhammad. The very Quran that Prophet Muhammad all his life, he gave for it. Nowhere use the word Sunnah for Muhammad. Always Sunnatullah, Sunnatullah. But in many cases, thousands of cases, our mullahs, our clergymen ignore the Quran, reject the Quran. They follow the books, several hundred centuries, fabricated by people like Bukhari. And I also find an irony. The place where betrayal of the Quran came to its zenith, that it succeeded to replace the Quran, to cover the light of the Quran. Bukhari, one of the biggest enemies of Prophet Muhammad. And in this place, we are starting this debate, public debate. Mashallah. And Bukhari, we are talking about Bukhari. According to the Bukhari, Bukhari is considered as friend of Prophet Muhammad. As without Bukhari, we cannot respect Muhammad. As if following Prophet Muhammad is not following the Quran, the book he brought, but a book fabricated 200 some centuries later by a guy in Bukhara who heard people. I heard from my uncle, he heard from his cousin, heard from his grandfather, heard from his dad, and this, that, and heard from Prophet Muhammad did. Bukhari, according to the Bukhari, Prophet Muhammad is a sexual maniac. He married, while he was 50 years old, he married a 9-year-old girl. This is one of the points Prophet Muhammad is attacked by the enemies of Islam. Because according to Bukhari, he was a pedophile. According to Bukhari, Prophet Muhammad was not someone rahmatan lil alameen. He was a torturer. According to Bukhari, he tortured a group of from Urayna and Uqayla tribes, and he arrested the guy who was accused of some crimes. He gouged his eyes, cut his legs and arms, and left him in the desert, thirsty, dying with thirst. According to the Bukhari, Prophet Muhammad was an oppressor, a tyrant, a pharaoh, because he didn't let people express their belief or disbelief the way God wanted them to. He sent a Syria, a terrorist group, to kill a woman poet who criticized him. This is in Bukhari. According to Bukhari, many rules that doesn't exist in the Quran, many prohibitions, Prophet Muhammad in the name of God he made it. But the Quran says, وَمَا عَلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغِ. Up to Prophet is only the tabligh. Prophet is not sharik, is not partner with God. The religion, I would not really use the word religion, or the deem, the system of Islam has only one source, God. In al-hukmu illa lillah. The Quran says to Prophet Muhammad, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ لِتَحْكُمَ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ بِمَا أَرَاكَ اللَّهُ. We revealed the book to you in order that you
30 seconds.
Okay, let him have it.
I had a lot of cheese in the story this morning. Very salty cheese. In order that you practice among people, do not follow their hawa. Do not follow. They want to separate you from the Quran. Do not follow the Quran. The verse, chapter 6, verse 19 says, where is the verse of the Quran? Just a moment. Remember, trouble. قل أوحي إلي هذا الكتاب لأبلغكم
If we can respect the time period, please.
How many minutes left?
You're done.
Nothing? Okay, just let me read this verse. Okay. وأوحي إلي هذا القرآن لأنذركم به ومن بلغ. This book is revealed to me, this Quran revealed to me in order to convey to you and those to warn you and those who receives it. أَإِنَّكُمْ لَتَشْهَدُونَ أَنَّ مَعَ اللَّهِ آلِهَةً آخَرَ. Do you really testify that there is another ilah besides God, another source besides God? That there is a partner with God in God's religion, God plus Muhammad plus Sahaba plus Tabi'in plus this Imam plus that Imam. أَتَشْهَدُونَ أَنَّ مَعَ اللَّهِ آلِهَةً آخَرَ.
Thank you, Edip.
آلهة أخرى. قل لا أشهد. Say, I do not testify. قل إنما هو إله واحد. Say, he is only one God, one authority. وإنني بريء مما تشركون. And I am away from what you are associating to God.
Move on to the second question. The reason we're doing this, if we don't sort of put a time limit on it, we can very easily get bedded down on one question and we won't be able to cover very many topics. The idea is that we'll introduce, or both speakers will introduce various theories, ideas, whatever, and then we'll have a question-answer period after the presentation. Second question. If we need hadith and sunnah, which hadith should we use and what of the sunnah should we follow? Imam.
It's a very good question. Whoever asked that question has asked a very academic question which will actually solve this problem. I didn't realize, by the way, that brother Edip was so, Bukhari is the enemy of Islam. Very difficult.
I told you, it is very confusing.
No, that's fine. I respect his opinion. I mean, that's fine. But I didn't know that there was such a disrespect to a person. I mean, enemy of Islam is a very interesting statement. Anyway, let's hopefully proceed. The Quran itself, because the question was about hadith, okay? How shall I ask you? And if you think about this, you will find that the answer to this actually answers all of the criticisms of the good doctor. The Quran that we have today, why do we believe in this book, this version here? Why do we even know that what the doctor is quoting is correct? How do we know? I mean, how do we know that the version that he has doesn't have 15 extra verses? How do we know that the Arabic that he just mentioned was the exact correct Arabic? How do we know that? And the way that we know that is because the companions of the Prophet, upon whom be peace, under the guidance of the Prophet, established a system in the time of the Prophet ﷺ to review and critically analyze every single statement that was uttered about Islam. Every single sentence and letter that the Prophet ﷺ spoke, every single one, was heard by the companions, compared by the companions, checked with the Prophet upon whom be peace, corrected by the Prophet, questioned the Prophet again, checked by Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, checked it again with him, checked again by Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam. This system is called al-jarh wa ta'deel. Alright, this is a science which is the envy of the entire history of human civilization. Why? Because it is this system which makes us Muslim and not Christian. Why? Because Christianity and the Bible and the Torah are holy books that have been in existence much longer than this Quran. They are also claimed to be the word of God. How can any of you claim that Allah is one when in the most original book, the Bible, the Old Testament, and in the New Testament we get a picture that Allah is three? So why do we not all believe that Allah is three? Why do we not believe in the verses of the Trinity? Why do we not believe in John, in chapter 5, in book 5, in chapter 5, verse 5, establishing the Father, establishing the Spirit? Why do we not believe in that? Why do we take parts of the Bible and leave the rest? Why? Because we know, as every scholar knows, of every single science knows, that not everyone can just speak and claim and say and this and that. Every science establishes a system of quality control. When quality control is applied to a particular area, we then work out using the laws of critical analysis, evidence, understanding the sources, the history, the revelation, possible bias, subjectiveness, objectivity, using all the sciences that we have, which we in the West have mastered now, but in actual fact the Muslims established so long ago. And not just the Muslims, we can't claim this is a Muslim science, because the Christian scholars have always been criticizing the text of the Bible. That's why when Constantine at the Council of Nicaea in 325, when he gathered all of the Gospels of all of the people who came with the words of Jesus, what happened? A council sat there and they decided themselves, this is in, this is out, this is in, this is out. That was based upon politics and not based upon critical, what we call textual criticism. When you look at the text and you try to establish, is this verse fabricated? You will find that the highest quality biblical scholars will tell you themselves that the verse of the Trinity in the Bible is fabricated. It is wrong. It is not part of it. This science has brought us this Quran. The Prophet upon whom be peace, when he was speaking, the companions would check. What did the Prophet Muhammad say? Is that the part of the Quran? Is this part of his commentary? And is this part of advice? Or is all three has been put together and made one verse? How do we even know? The scholars that established this system made it so that we know exactly through mutawatir transmission. This is not my own science. This is not my own decision. This is something that we study. That this is exactly what the Quran is, and this is what the nation has agreed upon. A nation not looking for its own benefit. And when a person was trying to look for its own benefit, we can catch him easily. I'll give you one example.
Just a quick note on the Sunnah. Just a quick comment on the Sunnah, please.
So, likewise, after the same system established for us what is the Quran, what has not been moved, and in Tashkent you can go and see what is that original Quran. The same system was applied to the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad upon whom be peace. Any person who had any bias, any person who was known to be a liar, any person who was known to have problems or reasons of any sort to be making a fabricated statement or a biased statement, those were thrown out. Brothers and sisters, there are over 1 million narrations of hadith from the Prophet Muhammad upon whom be peace. 1 million, okay? Over. In terms of authentic hadith, authentic, you can say only a few thousand, maybe 3.5, 4, 5,000 individual separate hadith. You think about the system which took 1 million and reduced it down to this number. The system which produced that is the same system which produced the Quran. The hadith that can be claimed to be authentic have to go through a process which no text today in our current time can survive.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now,
Dr. Edip, I want to repeat the question again so everybody knows exactly where we're at to keep on track. If we need the hadith and the sunnah, which hadith should we use and what of the sunnah should we follow?
Here's a good question. Why we follow the Quran? If we lose our trust to our ancestors, to the crowd, why we believe the Quran? Because we believe the Quran, because we glorify our ancestors, because we follow the crowd. Exactly the same argument Christians do, the same argument Hindus do. Why we follow this? Because our glorified saints, ancestors, they brought this way, we trust them. When your trust in God's word is not based on reason, or not based on your own evidence, is based on your trust on other humans, on the number of the crowd, absolutely. You will trust all the lies they tell you. You have to. You are bound with them. Because your trust in God, in fact, is not in God. You have no trust in God. You have no trust in God given the best blessing reason. You trust in the crowd, in glorified ancestors. And I understand the problem. But my dear, we have good reasons, inshallah, it is a subject of another. God saved us from this problem. God gave us a bayinah, the evidence, the proof, that we don't need to follow the crowd. We don't need even to trust them fully. We don't need to make them partners with God. We don't need to add the volumes of books which he considers as the Quran, mystery Quran, which is contradictory to the Quran. فَلْيَأْتُ بِكِتَابٍ مِثْلِهِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Let them bring a book like this if they are truthful. And Abu Dawud, one of the books he wants to sell to us, says, in the name of the Prophet Muhammad, lying in the name of the Prophet Muhammad, saying, أُوتِيتُ الْقُرْآنَ وَمِثْلَهُ. I am given the Quran and like the Quran. Exactly rejecting the Quranic verse that challenged these believers, let them bring something, a book like the Quran. Abu Dawud says, yes, we have a book like the Quran, hadith books. Every single sentence of Muhammad, if I was not a scholar of hadith before, if my father was not a prominent scholar, if I did not waste my years studying hadith, usul al-hadith, fiqh, usul al-fiqh, I would buy all these things from this gentleman. He's not telling the truth. The reason even the hadiths, they recognize the problem with hadith. Ibn Qutayba, a long time ago, wrote a book, Al-Ilmi Mukhtalif al-Ahadith. They call it science, which has nothing to do with science. And to resolve the contradictions among the hadiths. He wrote books, just recent books, by Al-Udwa ala Sunnati Muhammadiyya. It is a very interesting book. It is by a Sunni scholar. He, in that book, just read how much problem with hadiths. He says from 1 million hadiths, they collected, they reduced it to 3 to 5. Listen, it is like the Quran, but he didn't even know. We know how many verses in the Quran, exact number I can give you. 6,246. But he gives the hadith, which is glorified, it is the source of religion, 3 to 5,000. But as others, they will say from 3 to 10,000. Where is this ambiguity? But when you dig it, there is much more stinking problem comes out. Here it is. Every single word of Prophet Muhammad carefully written there. Well, when I look at those hadith books, they say, when Abu Hurairah writing hadith books, Umar saw Abu Hurairah say, are you going to create Mishnah of this ummah? That Jewish people fabricated lies, they wrote it down, are you going to kick me out from the masjid?
Sorry.
Listen. No,
I didn't hear this thing. You said that again?
Mishnah. Umar says, are you going to, this is from hadith books, 6 hadith books. Umar bin Abi.
But you just said you don't accept hadith.
I am using against you. This is cross-examination. Are you a lawyer? In lawyer, I incriminate you with your own belief, with your own words. I don't believe that. But I am saying, if you believe these books, there is contradiction. I show contradiction in your book. It doesn't mean I am believing that. If you are believing, my dear, in these very hadith books, there are so many trouble. Let me just give you one. We'll continue.
30 seconds.
The most reliable hadith, if there is one, it will be Hijjatul Wada, the last sermon. Because the very hadith books and common sense tell us, most people listen to that hadith, to that sermon. Okay. And that sermon, according to hadith book, was witnessed by about 100,000 Sahaba, which is glorified by them, but the Quran doesn't glorify Sahaba. Among Sahaba says there are hypocrites, there are liars, there are bystanders, there are kind of bad people too. But according to us, whoever sees Muhammad, who is just as an Arabic name, he is glorified, he is the partner of God in religion. According to that hadith, we have 3 different versions. Most of the hadiths in those hadith books are ahadi, means according to the fabricator of the hadith, only one person heard it. Most of the, more than 90% of hadith ahadi, only one person heard. But this is 100,000 people heard. Gosh, these people, according to hadith books, they had the best memory. Forget about best memory, they had Superman memory. They would memorize thousands, millions of things, would not forget it. But
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
The most important sentence, the last statement of this, the most authentic hadith, has 3 contradictory versions. We'll discuss about that. Yes.
Thank you. If anybody's got a cell phone, can they turn it off? Because it's disturbing when they go off. Third question. If Quran is sufficient as a guide, can we follow it through the light of reason only?
I hope that the brothers and sisters will remember these points that has been made, because I'm sorry to use this word because I don't like to speak like this, but you just heard many lies there, and I didn't realize that it was going to go in this direction. So, in fairness, please remember to bring up these points in the question and answer sessions to allow me to... Yeah, absolutely, because these statements won't go away. They need to be refuted. The reason, let me tell you something. If you're going to apply reason to Quran, I don't need 3 minutes. I just need maybe 20 seconds to answer this question. If you're going to apply reason alone, then you might as well forget about the Quran. Good luck to you. Okay? If you want to apply reason alone, then you can forget your identity as Muslims, because once you have brought down the Quran to your brain by yourself, and you worship your aql to that level, okay? Alone, only, because that's what the question says. Okay? The question says, is it a good question?
If Quran is sufficient as a guide, can we follow it through the light of reason only?
Okay? Which basically means, right? Because reason is what Allah has given to every single person. So that means that we have this book and we give it to you and you decide what you want to do with it. So if you want that to happen, then good luck. If people will want to, if people are going to come out with such an ignorant statement, all right? You see what amazes me about this is that you would never, ever, ever make this statement about any science, any knowledge, any sport, anything in life. But for the Quran, it's okay to say this. It's okay to say it for the Quran, right? But if you were to say it for politics, you would you'd look an idiot. They would laugh at you. They would walk you through the street naked and they'd whip you, right? If you said this about economics, if you said that to a medicine, right, I tell you what, okay, this is medicine, all this here, alright, you now go and do what you want with it. Go and look at it and you study it yourself. And when you're studying, just try each one and, see how it goes down and what effect it has, and then write your own observations down, okay? If it was any science, you would say you're a fool, you're an idiot. You need experts, you need people who have experienced it, you need people who have... This is not to say that the experts are 100% correct. This is not to say that the experts are free from error, because humans are not free from error, right? But to say that anyone can go by their own reason, and decide what is right and wrong, then you can forget this Quran. Good luck to you. That's what I would say.
Again, I'll repeat the question so we stay on track. If the Quran is sufficient as a guide, can we follow it through the light of reason only?
You are expert. We are going to not reason you. You say, we listen to God's word with reason, we cannot be guided. But we listen to you with reason or without reason. Do you think ultimately is it possible I trash my reason and I follow your words? What do you want me to do? You want me to reason you. If with my reason, ultimately I will reason your words. Why not reasoning ahsan al-hadith, the best word, which is God's word? Do I need to associate you with God? But if you say, well, you reason with Quran, but you don't reason with me, you just listen to me because I am above God when it comes to me, well, this is a different story. The Quran says, here it is, the verse of the Quran, 1736, do not follow anything blindly. This is for you. People, for you. Don't listen to me, to them. It makes sense, if reason, this makes sense, accept it, otherwise reject it. Don't look at this beard or my kind of title. Who cares? In the day of judgment, you will be alone in front of God. You cannot delegate your responsibility, say, God, though you gave me aql, my reason, though you told me in the Quran repeatedly, use your reason, but this guy said, don't worship your reason, which you never used that statement in the Quran. You say, don't worship your ego, don't worship scholars, don't associate them to God, don't worship this and that, but you never use aql in negative way. Always you encourage using reason. I listened to these guys, they told me that the Quran, your word is not enough. You are not unable to express yourself. Though you said ahsan al-hadith, the best hadith, they come up with another hadith, the hadith in ghayri, which you rejected in the Quran. The Quran says, فَلْيَأْتُوا بِحَدِيثٍ غَيْرِهِ. Let them bring another hadith. Interestingly, the word hadith in the Quran is always in negative. It's always in negative. Only it is positive when used for the Quran. They pick a negative word for other than the Quran. This is the way Quran prophetically condemned them. The word sunnah always is used for sunnatullah. They want to take sunnatullah, God's law, use it for God's slave, Muhammad, and God condemns them that way. They use the word ijma as another authority besides God. Ijma means a bunch of people, clergymen come, they make law in the name of God. Ijma is condemned in the Quran, always it is negative. When it is used for God, it is positive. But God is jami. But when it's ijma and rahum, they come made ijma, it's always negative. These are prophetic words of God. God knew the ignorance, the betrayers of the Quran, the mushriks. They will come up with idols, they call it hadith, they will call it ijma, they will call it sunnah, but God condemned them, convicted them by the usage of these words.
Thank you.
I hope you noted that he didn't answer the question, by the way. I hope everyone noticed that, yeah? Because the question was clearly reason alone. Okay? A person cannot approach the Quran without reason. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given insan the aql. Alright? The reason that we, by the way, brothers and sisters, the reason that we are better than animals, and sheep and cows, right, and dogs and birds, is because of this aql. Allah has blessed every single human being with aql. But as you saw, he ignored that question completely. The question was clearly, and I emphasized it again, to warn you about what he's going to do. He wants to try and make it understand. He wants to try and paint the picture that because of this and because of this, yeah, that I want no one to study Quran. I want you all to come to me. I want you all to come to me and listen to me alone, and you listen to only scholars. Let me tell you something, brothers and sisters. All right, this Quran, the big difference between Islam and Christianity, the big difference between Islam and every other religion is that every single Muslim has a direct link to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is not dependent upon any single person, and alhamdulillah. That link, every Muslim feels it. Every Muslim feels it. When I make a sin, when I do something wrong, I don't have to go to a priest. I don't have to go and pay the money. I don't have to go and buy a stone. I don't have to pay for an amulet. I just turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, forgive me. Direct link. This Quran is a direct link. And I will now claim something about me because he's saying that he says this, he says that. I don't even know this brother. First time I ever met him. I never said anything in my life about what he's saying. I'm telling you this, that I will tell you that this Quran is a gift from Allah for every single person. Go to it, read it, and feel it. You will understand. And I leave it with you, brother. And sister, I leave it with you. And you will come back, not to me, but you will come back to someone else. And you will say, brother, I don't understand this. Can you explain this to me? Brother, can you explain this to me? That is how the Quran is studied. I'm not saying that you have to go to your saints and your graves and your this and your that. That's ridiculous. Of course it's ridiculous. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made you. Let me tell you something. There are three creations that Allah has created that will go to hell or heaven. Alright? What are they? The jinn, the human beings, and the angels. Alright? The best of all of these three creations are the human beings, according to the mass majority of the scholars. The second are who? The angels. Why? Why are we better than the angels? When Allah in the Quran says, وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ, Allah says in the Quran that they only do what they have been commanded. They never question, they never argue, they never think. They just, Allah says, do, they do it. That's it. That's in the Quran, by the way. Alright? But Allah has made us in ahsan taqweem. We are the best of creation. Why? For one reason only. Because of our reason. Because we are the ones who are able to think and reject. And think and accept. We have a choice. And that's our reason. This one can't tell you it, I can't tell you it, you are the one who will tell it. He has made a decision. He has made a reason.
Thank you, brother. That's good.
Yeah, I want to follow up my brother. I am asking you, an expert. You know, prohibitions are important, especially dietary prohibitions, because it involves really daily decisions.
I'm not an expert, sorry.
Okay, I want, because you are telling about experts. If you know it about your experts, please tell me.
Just try and let experts say what they have to say.
I asked you about what kind of animal is haram and what's not. Do you have, since you say it is in the hadith books, according to hadith, can you tell me?
I'll tell you in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you in the Quran what is haram and halal. The maita is haram. The fishes of the sea and everything in the bahr, as in the Quran, is halal. Leave hadith. I'll use the Quran only.
Okay, beautiful. Now, according to you, if hadith say something haram other than the Quran, and there are many hadiths, both in Bukhari and Muslim, those hadiths that you say they were collected so carefully through jarh and ta'deel, and they are like Quran. According to that, I can find hundreds of hadiths, not dozens, hundreds of hadiths, prohibiting many things that it is not in the Quran, and also contradiction among the mazahibs based on this. Now, what is your opinion? To me, what do you tell me? Those hadiths are fabrications, or should I follow them?
Let me just get back on track here.
No, don't distract. Right now, dialogue. No, please. This is important.
Reasoning.
I know, we are reasoning right now.
Correct.
Please allow this happen, because this will, I think, my brother will come to his senses. Trust me, this one, you will all witness. Just give me 5 minutes. Don't interrupt. There is a Quran. That's okay, Masala. The Quran will be hakim between us, will be judged. And our reason, he may not reason, that's okay. Because he said, well, don't worship your apple, which Quran never uses such a statement. And later, thank God, he changed it. He started praising reason and apple, which is wonderful. Here is my dear brother. Tell me, according to hadith books that you want us to follow, are there extra prohibitions that the Quran does not do?
Firstly, in response to your question, the one who said don't worship your apple, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says,
It's not apple. The word apple is used in the Quran. You are using exactly the same Arabic word.
Based upon what? Because you're an Arabic scholar.
But you use Arabic word. You say don't worship apple.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can teach you Arabic, trust me.
Okay.
I'm an Arabic scholar.
So I will explain to these brothers exactly the root of hawa, please, if you can explain to them, please.
What is root Hawa? Is apple?
Yeah.
I want you. Hawa is wishful thinking.
You said
It's wishful thinking, my
thinking.
Yeah, wishful.
Thinking.
No, listen. In English, wishful thinking. In Turkish, we don't have even the word thinking.
Okay.
It says zan.
Maybe
Hawa means just
so the
wishful
English,
ideas.
so the English is closer to the Arabic now. That's good. I'm glad you said that.
Has to do with apple. A moment ago, I expected your clarification. You said don't worship apple.
That's right. Your apple, I told you before.
But the Quran always praises apple.
Okay.
It says 10:100. Remember this verse. Verse 10:100. We will convict people. We will expose people to filth. Those people who do not use their apple. This is apple so important. Without apple, you cannot find God. Without apple, the Christianity says believe on faith. Exactly like this gentleman says. Don't use your reason.
Is that what I said? Is that what I said?
Well,
he just said, because I want you to, because I know that he's speaking quickly in English, and you need to, understand what he said. He said that I said, believe in faith alone. That's what he just said. Right?
What is it?
He said, be like the Christian. He said, I'm like the Christian.
Well, Christians have reason and faith.
When
they have problem explain, they say faith.
It was on the table.
Okay, good. Now here, according to the Quran, there are only 4 dietary prohibitions. One is meat of pig, and the one animal sacrifice other than God, and what is it? Blood, and also the meat of dead animal on its own died. You don't know how it died. Besides this, there is no other prohibitions. According to you, give us clear answer, or if you cannot answer, say I don't have answer for it. Then go search it, send us email. But until now you have eaten food. I mean that 1 billion Muslims eating food. And obviously you must have answer for Muslims. What do you say? You say this is alone, the others depend on your taste. For example, I don't like horse meat. But this gentleman eats horse meat. People in America, they like crab and lobster. I don't want it, or I cannot. Even I went to China, they eat duck. Well, it is there. Can I say this got prohibited because my culture, my taste doesn't agree with you? Because of my culture, my personal taste, should I say God says this is prohibited? No. Now, what is it, according to you?
Okay. The brother has asked a question which I don't understand what to do with the topic, but in response to this question, he's asking me the ahkam, the rulings of food and drink. Now let me tell you something. The rulings of food and drink is a book which is bigger than this book here. Okay? The reason it's a book this big is because all of the interpretations of those people who are qualified to make that decision, and I even say let the doctor be one of those people. I'm happy for him to put his opinion forward. They have looked at the Quran and looked at the statements of the Prophet ﷺ and made their own decision based upon what they have learned, what is right and what is wrong.
My question was not that. My question
there are so many differences amongst the scholars when it comes to what is allowed and what isn't allowed. The Hanbali school says this, the Shafi'i school says this, the other scholars from without these schools say this. Now, the question should be asked, are they speaking from their own desires? No. What if they are speaking from their own desires as an aql? Then, that's up to them.
Okay, let's see.
That's up to them what they say.
But you didn't answer me. Again, are there other prohibitions in other books, hadith books, besides this?
Yes, there are.
Okay, good. Thank you. Now let's read these verses. Please pay attention. Verse 145. Say to us, to Prophet Muhammad, say, this is obviously to Prophet Muhammad from the countries, I do not find in what is inspired to me forbidden, except that it be already dead, or blood poured forth, or meat of pig for it is full, or what is corruptly dedicated to other than God. Whoever is forced without seeking disobedience or transgression, then your Lord is forgiving, compassionate. Says, say, I do not find anything. If the Quran says, say, these are prohibited, means just enumeration. Well, you say, there are other things Prophet Muhammad added, Sahaba added, Imams added, but doesn't say, there is a negation. Say, I do not find anything else except, double negation, except this. Now watch. For those who are Jewish, we forbade all that have claws and from the cattle and the sheep. We forbid their fat except what is attached to the back or entrails or mixed with bone. That is punishment for their rebellion, and we are truthful. If they deny you, then say, your Lord has vast compassion, but his might will not be turned away from the criminal people. Criminal people, remember, because criminal people is mentioned in the context of fabricated hadith in verse 614 and 615. The enemies of Prophet, they will come with hadith, with fancy hadith. Very interesting. Those who set up partners with God, because sources, not source one Quran, one God, God plus Muhammad plus those who set up partners will say, if God wished, we would not have set up partners, nor would have our fathers, nor would have forbidden anything. Those before them lied in the same way until they tasted our wine, saying, do you have any knowledge to bring out to us? You only follow conjecture.
Thank you.
Let me finish. You only guess. Let me finish. This is very important. This is basically we finish the game. Trust me. Okay. Say, God has the conclusive argument. If he wished, he would have guided you all. Say, now here's my question. This is exactly what God after we say. Now I am saying God's word. Bring forth your witness who bear witness that God has forbidden this or that. Do you have anything, any witness that say God is forbidding anything besides these four things?
The Prophet
Good. He answered, he says, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if they bear witness, listen carefully. God says, if they bear witness with just witness, then do not bear witness with them, nor follow the desires of those who deny our signs, and those who do not acknowledge the hereafter, and they make equals with their Lord. Say, come, let me recite to you what your Lord has forbidden for you. That you should not set up anything with him, not Prophet Muhammad, not your Sahaba. And be kind to your parents and do not kill your born children for fear of poverty, and continues. You see, this is a trap of God. God trapped him. He says, you bring your witness, anything beside this, if you claim there is prohibition. Okay, and he said, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and God continued, if they bring witness, tell them I will not join you in this testimony, because you are setting up partners with God. Muhammad was not God's partner. He was God's Rasul.
In all fairness, I'd like to give the Imam a response to that.
My response is what one of the scholars said. If he can repeat what he just said, I'll accept it. Because I think that through the last 5 minutes, he's been just talking rubbish. He's been making up and just talking, and I always said, Wallahi, I have no idea what he just said. I'm not saying that for any reason. I'll have to look at the tape, because it was half
the Quran says,
half that, half this, half
curtain between you and them. Exactly, this is the prophecy of the Quran.
Can I ask any question? Does anyone actually remember what he just said?
Curtain. Go ahead, please, someone translate. Haidar, where are you?
We're going to go to a question and answer session afterwards. Can we stick with the panel here? Can we try and get through some of these questions, because these questions will generate a lot of thought and a lot of questions afterwards. So let's just stick with it. The fourth question. The Quran instructs us to follow the messenger. What does this mean? We are instructed to follow the messenger.
I think we discussed this issue soon. I'll go to some of the substance issues.
I haven't discussed it. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, Ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul, which is what the question is basically talking about. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is not Allah. Okay? Allah is one. Yes. Allah chose this Prophet and ayyadam him, and He helped him. He helped him, He guided him, He protected him. He nurtured him as a person, as a teacher, as a guide. He sent the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and He created this group of people around him, the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, as Allah calls them in the Quran. Quran, not what this man says, that they are thieves and hypocrites and bunch of this, that, whatever. We are not, and he also said, and this is why you have to listen carefully to what he's saying. He's saying some very insulting things, which is his choice, that's okay. He said that any person who met the Prophet with an Arabic name is a Sahaba. He's the first person who's ever said that, ever. Okay, this has, we never heard this definition before. What I have seen as well. He has seen in Turkey people who worship these people. They do. I know that you might find that difficult to believe, but they go and they make sujood to men. Alright? They make sujood to men. He has a point. You know, I walk into a place, because of this beard, someone comes and wants to try and kiss my hand. I put my hand away, what are you doing? What are you kissing my hand for? My hand is not holy. Sorry, brother. My hand is not holy, but his hand is holy, mashallah. It smells nice as well.
No touching.
You know, there are Muslims that have big problems. And these problems, they affect people who want reform in society. Because I want reform in society. I want people to become more involved. I want people to use their brain more. I want the Muslims to come out of the villages and the farms and not understanding anything and come and join society and interact and understand humanity and bring light and guidance to mankind. I'm desperate for that. That's why I come to places like this. That's why I leave. I love my wife's cooking. And I've left her cooking for 4 days. Alright, to come here. And I'm happy to be here because I want to try and raise people out of their ignorance. And this brother, he is from Turkey, he's seen a lot more than I have. Just my small time in Turkey has depressed me more than anything else. There are people out there who worship graves. Graves. You know, you will not imagine. They will make sujood and they will say to the grave, give me this, give me that. You think, what's going on?
Not just in Turkey.
And in Pakistan. And in Pakistan. I've seen it in the centers. There is, his name is Gosh, Baba, whatever. Huge thingy. And they go there and they worship and they ask. Now when a person, a Muslim, who wants reform, sees this, he says, look at what these people have done. They have made the Muslims worship them. They have made the Muslims worship Muhammad. This is not Islam. This is wrong. But that reaction, which is the correct reaction, should not mean therefore you throw the Quran Sunnah in the bin. You throw the history in the bin. You throw the Sahaba in the bin. You throw the heritage and the history in the bin. It means that you revive the people according to the original sources. You clean the religion. وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, cleansing. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمْ, and teach them. Al-Kitab, Quran, wal-Hikmah, the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Thank you.
You know that Christians distort some verses of the Bible and mistranslate, interpret, add words in it to create Jesus as Son of God. Is exactly doing the same thing. And if you say Jesus is not Son of God, you don't love Jesus. You hate Jesus. The same as this person. Unfortunately, I was like him. I'm not hating him. I'm not angry with him. I am maybe upset because I see 1 billion Muslims behind in everything. They are most illiterate. Look at the patterns. I look at the patterns in the world. 1 billion Muslims, almost 1/5 of the population, but in pattern is not even 1% in intellectual. They oppress women. Why? Because Hadith says so. The Hadith, so-called Hadith, attributed to Prophet Muhammad, supposedly following, but in fact betraying the teaching of Prophet Muhammad.
Cite the Hadith.
Okay, Hadith says in front of the prayer, a donkey, a pig, and a woman pass, then your prayer is nullified. Woman is put in the company of pig and donkey, which is in the culture, is very bad.
There's no hadith in Islamic history that says that. Right?
There is. I have the sources in my...
It's on record.
In 19 questions...
doesn't know what he's saying.
In 19 questions...
He said a donkey, a pig, and a woman. Actually, the hadith is a donkey, a black dog, and a woman.
Oh, good. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for the correction.
No, because you should.
Well, it's a great correction. Oh my gosh.
Without putting on my question,
Like that.
you are speaking about the religion.
That's
Speak accurately.
Okay, thank you. Oh, you will correct me. I appreciate it.
No, I don't want to
I'm not saying I know.
Correct yourself.
Oh no, my memory is not good, and thank you very much for correcting.
And
I appreciate this kind of correction all the time from you. You have to know a lot. And another hadith says, more than half of the hell, most of the hell is from women. But the Quran, most men are the bad men. Pharaoh is the bad man, Abu Lahab, Abu Jahl. But according to hadith, is the opposite. If anyone kind of, in fact, anyway, but a lot of putting down the women. Now, this gentleman,
trying to get back to the topic,
okay, go.
the importance of the messenger.
This gentleman says, Quran and Hikmah, Kitab Hikmah. He wants to separate Hikmah from God's word. What is implicitly saying? Kitab, God's word, Quran, he says, doesn't have Hikmah, wisdom. Wisdom is in this book, which Bukhari, 230 years later, collected. Again, 230 years. Collected from hearsay. We'll go about that. With a little bit detail, you will find out how much trouble we have. He said, but the Quran says the opposite. Yasin, well, Quran, the Hakim. Yasin and the Hakim, Quran. This is the book of Hikmah. And the verses of the Quran in chapter 31, Luqman says, Tilka min al-Hikmah. These are from Hikmah. Therefore, the Quran is Hikmah, but they want to separate God from the messenger and say Quran is the book, but Hikmah, wisdom in this book, put down women, monkeys, stone to each other, Prophet Muhammad gouges people's eyes, those kind of things are wisdom. This gentleman showed us who really he respects most. He really showed. Because when he mentioned God, most of the time, I paid attention, he says, Allah, God, God. But whenever he mentions the name of his idol, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, with a long line of praise he come after that. Even from Sahaba. Sahabas are friends of Prophet Muhammad. But among the friends of Quran says there are hypocrites, there are some bad people. These Sahaba later they kill each other, some of them.
Where is it said?
I have this reference. No, I don't have time.
He doesn't have time.
No, no.
And he doesn't.
I can find it. No, I will find it because we'll give it a break. I will find.
You would find it, but you will find something you don't believe in. So what's the point?
Okay. According to your own history, the whole history is Tabi'in, they kill each other. They killed, who killed whom? He said these books are so kind of careful about from whom to get. Marwan is one of the narrators of Bukhari. Marwan, who is according to this, the same history that he believes, who is a drunkard, oppressive ruler. But not a single hadith from Abu Hanifa who is Tabi'in. Why? Because Abu Hanifa did not believe in those nonsense and later they made up a sect in his name. Now I want to finish this one with one hadith in his book, because he will have a lot of problem with this book of wisdom supposedly, but book of full of contradiction problem. In that book says, he can correct me if he doesn't think it's accurate. Let me finish this hadith. Okay. His hadith says Prophet Muhammad was in his deathbed, and there were prominent Sahabas around him. According to the hadith, Prophet Muhammad says, bring me paper and pen, I will write you something that after me will not be diverted. Interesting, this in fact contradicts the other lie that Prophet Muhammad was illiterate. Another big lie, distortion of the word ummi. And then Sahaba, one of the Sahaba, according to that hadith, that Sahih hadith he believes, runs to the room to bring a pen and paper for Muhammad, and then according to that hadith, Umar bin Khattab stops and said, stop. Hasbuna kitabullah, according to his own hadith. God's book is enough for us. Hasbuna kitabullah, the one we say, he says you are heretic, you are out of Islam. According to his own hadith, Umar bin Khattab, the second Khalif, stopped that person, says, Hasbuna kitabullah, this is his own hadith. And then he stops, and other Sahaba agree with Umar. They say, yes, Kitabullah is enough for us, and then Muhammad dies without writing it.
Edip, thank you. Just
Just a quick comment. Again, I'm going to try and give you an example that you will understand to refute what he is trying to say. Hasbuna kitabullah. Now let me ask you a question. If, for example, we have the constitution here in Kazakhstan.
What does it mean, Hasbuna kitabullah? Translate.
It is enough for us. It is enough for us the book of Allah. Right? The book of Allah. The constitution here in Kazakhstan. Do we agree that it's pretty much a complete constitution? We can argue about that, okay? But it covers everything. The French invade Kazakhstan. The French invade Kazakhstan. Alright? Tomorrow. They say that we're going to apply.
For the record, the constitution of Kazakhstan is the perfect, complete, and the best one in the world.
So,
okay, hold on. Did you study the world's constitution? Okay.
I don't need to. Kazakhstan constitution is the best in the world still.
So the French come and they want to change some of the laws and change some of the system and introduce some of their laicité, which is their own principles of law. And a parliamentarian stands up. Your father stands up and he says, Hasbuna Constitution of Kazakhstan, thank you very much. Does that mean that now he's out of a job, your father's out of a job, the minister's out of a job, the law has been destroyed, the current system is now finished because he said that? If I say to you that that's enough, we're happy with what we are, does that destroy the entire system? So what he's talking is actually he's taking a statement, he's making up himself what it means. The ayah that he mentioned before, so don't think about that for even more than 2 seconds, what he just said.
Because as a source enough for us, if he says it doesn't mean you don't exist, you cannot speak, you cannot eat. Listen,
and then
in the context that the constitution is enough for us, means we should not make another book.
Please, just give it.
That's the first thing that he said. The second thing that he said was the ayah وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. This actual verse, the funny thing is that it refuted what he said. He's saying that I'm saying that the book, Quran, does not have hikmah. That's what he said. Okay, because he said, Yasin wal Quran al-Hakim. He's saying the Quran is Hakim. The Quran is a wise book. Did you hear me say that the Quran does not have hikmah? No. And this is the refutation against him, and it's the proof of the Sunnah. Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions two things, Al-Quran wal-Hikmah, we know the Quran has hikmah, of course, it is the most wise book. So therefore this hikmah must be what? Something else. Because if we say it is hikmah, then it means the Quran itself has no hikmah. If it say it's not hikmah, it means the Quran is not hikmah. Of course the Quran is hikmah. And now, here's the key question. This is the key question. I'm now saying to you that hikmah here now is the Sunnah. You should say to me, what is your proof? That's what you should say to me. You should use your aql now. Use your aql and say, what is your proof? I say to you that the people who understood the Quran better than me and you, the ones that the Prophet taught himself, what was his job? What was the Prophet's job? But to teach this book to a people that will spread it so that me and you now can be sitting here and pray as Muslims. That was his job. He did it. Adda al-amana. He completed the trust that Allah had put upon him. وَنَصَحَ الْأُمَّةِ. And he then gave advice to his nation. How? By teaching his people. Why? So that after, the generations that come after, when there is no Muhammad there, we go then and ask the people who saw Muhammad, who met Muhammad, and asked Muhammad. They were asking him all the time. They used their aql. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would say, do you know this? What do you think about this? What do you think is the best verse? What do you understand about this? If they didn't understand, they asked him, Ya Rasulullah, doesn't Allah say in the Quran here this? Doesn't Allah say in the Quran that? They used their aql. We are not against aql, ya ikhwan.
Okay,
we are the people.
1,000 people listen, it transforms, we get mutation. And the third version, very interestingly, the most repeated one, it says, I leave you Quran, follow the Quran, you will be guided. Like in other hadiths that Umar says, Hasbuna kitabullah, doesn't let even Prophet Muhammad write something, and according to this Sahih hadith, exactly. Therefore, what are you inviting me to? Your most authentic hadith supposedly has big problem three versions, and interestingly, these versions tells us a lot about the motivation of fabricating hadiths. Most likely, if Prophet Muhammad gave sermon, he told them, I leave you Quran, follow the Quran, like exactly the Quran says. But later, the follower of Sunnah, who made up Sunnah in the name of Muhammad, because Sunnatullah, they want to replace Sunnatullah with their idol Sunnah, Sunnat Muhammad. In fact, it is their Sunnah, it cannot be Muhammad's Sunnah. Muhammad's Sunnah was the Quran. And they fabricated Quran and Sunnah. And those who was Shia, they fabricated Quran and Ahl Bayt. And we see these three versions in the 6 hadith book. I have references in 19 questions from Muslim scholars.
Thank you.
So what the doctor wants to basically try and say, as you can now hear, when he talks about the Sahaba, he said he thinks he memorized 700,000 hadith and he had amazing memory. This is basically what he wants to do and make it clear. He wants to attack the Sahaba. Okay, these are words of sarcasm used against a companions, a group of people who did not praise themselves, did not get money for what they did not charge for the service. They were martyred for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what they believed in. We know out of these people, when we study them, who made mistakes, who didn't make mistakes. The companions are humans and they're not ma'soom. They're not infallible. These are men. And all the statements, just like the hadith that are narrated in all the different books of hadith, are to be criticized. And this is part of Islam. Islam, when you study it, and this is what we're calling for. This is what you see, actually, in actual fact, what we're saying here is that we need to revive the study of Islam. What the doctor is saying is that we need to destroy the sources of Islam, as the enemies of the Muslims want to try and promote. Because of course, to destroy the confidence of the Muslims is to get rid of their main sources, what they can connect to. My brothers and sisters, the Prophet ﷺ, in many different narrations, not just Hajj al-Wada, which is the final Hajj when he spoke to many people, not just in this occasion, but in smaller occasions, smaller gatherings, said things where he only mentioned the Quran. Sometimes he only mentioned the Sunnah. Sometimes he didn't even mention the Sunnah or the Quran. He said, for example, just to give you an example, because he wants to use a hadith. If you want to use a hadith, then you've got to use the hadith. Otherwise, don't bother with the hadith. Otherwise, stick to the Quran.
Thank you for supporting my position.
No, that's fine.
You say exactly. You can find anything you want.
I agree.
That's exactly my position.
I agree. Because listen, when you try to debate with someone, all right, when you try to debate, you have to establish some common ground, right? And we cannot establish common ground here because he's saying there's no Sunnah, which is this is a statement which has never ever been mentioned ever in the history of Islam, except now when the enemies of Islam have become. Never. No. Islam is built upon Quran was Sunnah, Kitab was Sunnah. So, because we can't agree on this basic principle, someone's going to have to do something, otherwise we can't debate. I am willing to put the Sunnah out there. Okay, fine. He doesn't want to take the Sunnah. So let's just stick to the Quran then, because that's the only thing he wants to use. He can't then therefore be using the Sunnah when he's rejecting the Sunnah. So let's stick to the Quran then. But if you want to then quote Sunnah, then you have to then read the rest of the Sunnah. In one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Iqtada billati ba'd." The two, follow the two that come after me, Abu Bakr wa Umar. Okay, what does this mean then? What does this mean? Does this mean now that we forget the Quran, forget the Sunnah, and we worship Umar and Abu Bakr? Do every time that we see a hadith, we have to worship it? Every time we see a hadith, do we have to throw the rest of the hadith out? We have to throw the Quran out? This is a man, okay, who has a paintbrush, who likes to paint everything black or white. That's what he wants to do. He doesn't want to understand the sciences. He doesn't want to understand what has built this religion. He doesn't want to understand why is a hadith which says Ahlul Bayt weak, not acceptable, and why this one which says the Quran or Sunnah is weak, not acceptable. Another narration which says the Quran and the Sunnah is Sahih. Another version, not Sahih. This is a huge science. A huge science which we are not trying to study because we're going to make profit out of it. And I don't want you to worship me. I don't want you to worship the scholars or the imams. The Quran itself explains. The Quran itself, he wants to attack the Sharia of the Prophet ﷺ. Allah says that we sent a message in Surah Ibrahim. We sent بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِمْ لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ. Okay? We did not send a messenger. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِنْ رَسُولٍ. We did not send a messenger إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِمْ, except in the language of their people, لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ, to clarify to them the teachings of what? This Quran. To teach the people the religion. This does not mean that we have to throw away the Quran. This does not mean we have to throw away the aql. This does not mean that we are saying that we worship Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No. Allah has sent the messenger with a job. Allah has created a group of people around him to help him in this job. None of these people are worshipped. Do not look, don't put these glasses on that he wants you to put on, where everything is either anti or for. George Bush, like, you are either with us or you are against us. Absolutism, which doesn't exist in any kind of science whatsoever. We need to be honest, and that's what's happening now. You're seeing dishonesty to the science. When you study this, people study these sciences for years and years and years. This is not something that I'm telling you you must accept like this. There are some huge explanations, and there are scholars that, for example, didn't believe this hadith to be correct. So just because you don't believe a hadith to be correct, does not mean you have to throw the whole sunnah out, and the principle of the sunnah out, and the source of the sunnah out. So you need to stop and think about what he's saying, because he's drawing a picture which is completely fraudulent, completely.
Thank you. Deep, I'll give you a 1 minute response.
Let's a little bit be relaxed, because I think some of the things we carry out together better, and just as a moderator, don't be an authoritarian one. A little bit relaxed. Okay, I don't know which one to start with. Paintbrush, yes, I paintbrush. I reject any idols, any partners with God. It is La ilaha illallah. There is no compromise. I will not add a little bit from here, a little bit from there. How can you throw all the idols? There are some idols a little bit questionable, but we need some more, some little bit idols, some little bit partner with God. No, sir. There is categorical rejection, any authority besides God. Sharia is not Sharia Muhammad. It is Sharia law. It is God's Sharia. Muhammad was messenger, tabligh. He did the delivery. He cites the verse about لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ. He mistranslates, which is one of the, unfortunately, tricks they have done, Muslim scholars. They mistranslate, distort the meaning of the word. Tabayyana, bayyana has two meanings. One is to explain something that is not explained, is not clear. The other means to announce, to declare that something is secret. The Quran, in fact, uses both words, both meanings for the same word. Listen carefully. If the Quran is mubin, the Quran repeatedly says the Quran is mubin. And the Quran says that God clarified tabyin the Quran, God did this. Therefore, we have only way of understanding this. It is not, Muhammad's job was not clarify something is already clear by God. He needs to announce something that secretly came in through wahy. Look at the verse 3:183. Very interesting. 3:183. 3:183 says this. No, I think I got the wrong number. وَإِذْ أَخَذَ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ مِيثَاقًا. Let me find the verse. Just give me 1 minute.
Can you give it by memory?
I will find the verse. God took covenant from the people of the book, promised that they will declare the book, they will not hide it. لَتُبَيِّنُنَّهُ وَلَا تَكْتُمُونَهُ. I want to remember the whole verse, but that's enough. That's enough. You will declare the book, you will not hide it. Bayin, exactly the same word used for the Prophet Muhammad. Now, if you separate one verse from the Quran, take out of the context, you can distort it. This is exactly some people will do the Quran say. But if the Quran is mubin, as the Quran says, if the Quran is made tabyin by the Quran,
by God, who is Alim and Khabir, then the meaning of tabhir over there for Prophet Muhammad, not to hide it for the fear of people, but to declare it as a messenger of God. And one more point. This issue never discussed before says. It is unfortunately another incorrect statement. This issue was heavily, strongly discussed in the beginning of the Prophet Muhammad. Many Muslims like us, like me, they were in prison, they were killed, massacred by the followers of Hadith and Sunnah. There are a lot of evidence for that. But since the history is written by the murderers, by the massacres, by the winners of that chaotic times, they try to kind of hush their names. They label them with bad labels. They are Zindiqa, they are Mu'tazila, they are this, and attribute to some lies in order to degrade them. There is a beautiful book by Professor Aisha Musa. In fact, he went to some sources, their own sources, brought out there were major arguments when Shafi'i came up defending Hadith Sunnah. Who wrote, why Shafi'i wrote his book, defending Hadith against Zanadiq? They call them Zanadiq because they rejected Hadith. They said Quran alone. The whole the book of Shafi'i is defending Hadith against or rejected. But this gentleman wants to tell us, no, in the past no one discussed this, this is just new innovation. Okay. Exactly like Christians. You say Trinity, there's no Trinity. No one discussed this among our saints and popes and Christians. No one, this is just innovation. You are questioning, how can you be Christian? Trinity since the beginning. Exactly the same lies.
Thank you. Quick response, please.
Forget whether the Sunnah was a question or not. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there were people who were saying, I'm a prophet. Musaylimah said, I'm a prophet. So this is not about saying that Islam was not challenged by fools and by idiots and by deviant people and by people who didn't know. Of course, throughout history, every single person wants to make a name for themselves. Every single person believes that they are on something. So this is not about an issue. What I'm talking about is this renewed movement in this time. The kind of organizations that back people like the doctor here are those that print false Qur'ans and put them on the internet and call them Al-Qur'an and call them Qur'an, so that people can go there and become confused. And these are the kind of organizations, these kind of movements have been studied. And I didn't realize that we were entertaining someone like that. And that's important to understand, because when it comes to discussion, okay, we have no shame. I have no shame in saying that there are discussions within Islam and then there are discussions outside of Islam. I spend half of my time, half of my year discussing with non-Muslims, and that's fine. Non-Muslims, forget about a Muslim. Non-Muslims, we don't even believe in Kitab al-Sunnah, but they believe in other things. And we can debate and we can discuss and we can think. What you're hearing here are things which it's a new religion. It's a religion which has no relationship with Islam, which is based upon Quran or Sunnah. The brother said is trying to make it out that because Allah says the Quran is mubin, it does not need explaining. I want to ask a question here. Everyone in this room has held a copy of the Quran. Have you all been able to read it just in its Arabic? No. You have to have a translation. Read the translation. Are you all able to understand it in its translation? It's a question, honest question. No. I'm someone who studied for 15, maybe something years. I struggle to understand the Quran. I struggle to understand the Quran. Does that mean that Allah failed in His job? Does that mean that Allah sent a book which was a waste of time? No. There is no contradiction between Allah saying this is a clear book, a manifest book, فيه آيات محكمات. What else? We have sent down verses which are clear, muhkam, and others which are mutashabihat. Others which are not so clear. Not so clear. Does this mean that there's a problem with the book? Or does it mean that this is some intention behind Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be able to create a scholarship, to be able to keep the people, those people who are following this book, to understand upon their right level? What does He say in the verse after it? So those people who believe in the mutashabihat, those that are not clear, absolutely clear to them now, but they accept it because it's from Allah. Because later on they will read it more, they will study it more, they will understand it more, they will come closer to the book, they will be able to approach it and understand it more. There is no contradiction. Every time I say something, what he is trying to do is to make it out it's impossible to be bold, or it's impossible to be like this. This book is clear. This book is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the same book which tells us to go and study it, and if you yourself can become good enough in the book, then you can be the one who's teaching the other people. If you're not good enough, then go and learn from those people who you think are good enough. And if those people are not good enough, then go and ask someone you trust, that you trust, I'm not going to tell you, that you trust who believes that other people are good enough. There is nothing here. We're not trying to worship idols. He keeps saying, I'm telling you to worship me, worship Muhammad, worship La ilaha illallah. This is all just kalam fadi, empty rhetoric.
Thank you. One very quick response.
Yeah, I know where he wants. He wants to associate me with enemies of Islam, Jewish, Zionists. This is exactly the trick they use against Muslims. They want anything questioning their falsehood, their mixture of mishmash hearsay, which calls science of certain true filth of hearsay, and he accused me of being with them. But in fact, if you see my articles, my writings, I am upfront arguing against them, exposing the enemies of Islam. I had an argument with Robert Spencer, who is using hadiths, those false hadiths to attack Muhammad, to put Muhammad, claim that Muhammad was a sexual maniac, with a murderer and all kinds of things. I am defending Muhammad based on the Quran. I have an argument against those people who came up with New Quran. Front Page magazine is a Zionist magazine. Look at that argument. I want you to go read what kind of an argument I have, powerful argument. They were not able to respond. But this gentleman will not be able to talk to them because they are using exactly his sources to expose problem. Yeah. Mutashabi is not misambiguous. In fact, mutashabi means, is another problem. He doesn't get even mutashabi, unfortunately. Mutashabi means multiple meaning. Muslims, alims who study the Quran will get the right meaning based on the muhkam's very obvious one meaning words. And you listen and you will understand. You don't follow taqlid blindly. You reason, you say, well, one contradicts the Quran, like he brought Muhammad explaining the Quran, which is already explained, or Muhammad declaring the Quran, which came as a secret wahi. Then you reason, you follow the best. Exactly what you should do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I want to move on to a different topic again. Are women mentally and spiritually inferior to men?
No. End of the
question.
In fact, women are superior to men in virtually every aspect that I know. That's my own personal experience.
Okay, I disagree with him. I disagree with him.
Anyone who's married knows that. Anyone who has children knows that. Anyone who has thought about what their mother has gone through knows that. Anyone who knows Aisha radiallahu anha knows that. There is no doubt about that. But these are just doubts that are being pushed to try and force some kind of argument from us. So we won't be falling into the traps, brothers.
Okay, beautiful. And I would say I disagree with him. I don't think that man is superior to women or woman is superior to men. Each they have different advantages. We cannot say this superior to this to that. But this gentleman, I'm very surprised, which is interesting. It goes just the opposite of majority of Muslim scholars or Hadith book says. He mentioned women, mothers. Yes, Hadith books praises mother. In fact, make the heaven under the feet of mothers. Very interesting. But you see, the same Hadith book does not give any level, any kind of dignity to wives. Put wives, the moment ago he corrected the Hadith, which somehow I don't have really perfect memory like Bukhari has or Abu Hurairah has. I said pig, he corrected according to his own Hadith, which supposedly put men superior, but according to Hadith, woman is in the same company of dogs. If you read Hadith books, there is a lot of putting down the dogs. You kill the black dog, you touch the dog because it's dirty. There is a lot of mythology, superstition about dogs, and women in those Hadiths put the same level, and now he's coming saying, well, woman is superior than men. Which one I believe? You promote this one and you say this one. You are in deep contradiction.
Thank you.
According to the Quran, because he doesn't believe in hadith, so we'll use Quran instead. Right? According to the Quran, the men, or women, but let's focus on men because he wants to, are worse than the dogs. Worse than dogs. So, at least in the hadith, according to him, they are like.
Where do you get this idea?
When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah that a person, when he gives a gift to someone, okay? When Allah gives, so you give me so I have this and I give this to you, and you are happy now, I'm giving you a gift. So I want it back now. I want it back. Yeah? Allah says the person who does this is like a dog, worse than a dog. Right? So, if we are criticized for something, or doing something, or ruling, or whatever, does this make me, in my essence, when I'm doing the right thing, worse than a dog? No. But I might do something that makes me in a bad situation. For example, the Prophet said in the prayer, he doesn't believe in the prayer, so I'm going to just give you this hadith, that the person who goes before the imam, when you're praying and when he goes to sit, you go before him, and before you stand up very quickly, that this is what the donkey does. Alright? Does that mean I'm a donkey all the time? No. What I'm trying to say to you is that, again, he's just trying to twist, turn, hadith, whatever, to try and make out that I believe that the woman is like a black dog all the time. I mean, it's ridiculous. I made it very clear at the beginning what I think of women. But as I said, there's an agenda. You have to understand everything is coming from an agenda.
I have agenda, la ilaha illallah. No, I have to, please. Because he distorted the Quran in order to defend that hadith put on woman, it is general woman. Listen carefully. Here is the verse he distorted twice. The meaning of the verse he distorted, the implication of the verse he distorted. 7175. Relate to them. I was obliged.
Have some quiet back there, please.
7175. Relate to them the news of the person whom we gave him our signs, but he withdrew from them, and thus the devil followed him. This is one prototype person, not only humans or men. This could be even women. But this is someone we don't know. And he became of those who went astray. Had he willed, we could have elevated him by it, but he stuck to the earth and he followed his wishful thinking. His example is like the dog. If you scold him, he pants, and if you leave him, he pants. Such is the example of the people who deny our signs. Relate the stories, perhaps they will think. This is about a man who is rejecting God's signs, God's ayat, and follow the Zen. And this man, now what has to do, all women are, what nullifies the prayer, if woman passes, the dog, and what was the other one? Donkey passes. This is whole woman put in that category. Whole woman fill the majority of the hell. In this one, a prototype disbeliever, ingrate person is mentioned and likened to dog. That is kind of the way he's attacking without knowing.
Okay, thank you, Edip. The next question will be, did Muhammad have any special powers?
I don't know. I don't know what the exact definition. Whoever asked the question, I don't know what they mean by special powers.
I think it's very often they will say that Muhammad split the moon into head. That will be a special power.
Sure. I know. As far as I know, as far as I understand, the Prophet ﷺ didn't split the moon, and neither did he have the power to split the moon. In fact, we know. No, I'm not thinking. That's a fact. In fact, we also know that when the Prophet's son, Ibrahim, passed away, he died when he was very, very small. The sun was eclipsed. Eclipse, you understand what eclipse is? Yeah. So the sun was eclipsed. And the Prophet ﷺ became very worried because he knew that the people, they know that the Prophet ﷺ is very upset because his baby son has just passed away. And they thought that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent this eclipse to show the, because if you imagine, the sun passes away and the whole world becomes all black and dark because the Prophet's son has died. So this is this potentially will make the people think this is a super powerful prophet. And look what's happened. His son dies and the whole world goes black. So he came running out and he told the people straight away that, Ya ayyuhan nas, O people, the sun does not eclipse for anyone. This is from the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not for the death of Ibrahim, nor for the death of me. If you look at this Prophet ﷺ and you study his way and his system, you will find that he is always taking the attention of himself and putting upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Always, always. This is what this brother can't understand. You see, he thinks that the only way, because he likes this. That's what he wants me to say. That's what he wants to say. Because he thinks that I idolize the Prophet. Right? I follow the Sunnah and I love my Prophet, but I do not idolize him. When the companions were there, and he would say something, we're going to do this tomorrow. They said, if you will, Ya Rasulullah. Ya insha'aki and inshi'ti Ya Rasulullah. He get angry. No. Qul insha'Allah. Say insha'Allah. Don't say if I will, because I don't have any will. This is Allah. Don't turn me into something which the Christians did. When he was dying, last words coming out, what did he say? Do not take my grave as a place of worship like the Jews and the Christians took their places of worship. To the last second, he is defending La ilaha illallah. He talks about La ilaha illallah. I swear by Allah that he doesn't understand even what La ilaha means. I swear by Allah, he doesn't know what it means. A minute ago, he just said that the only person that the dog is referring to is the one who hadith ayatullah, the one who rejects the ayat of Allah. Brothers and sisters, if you take nothing away today, except one thing, then take this away. The greatest sign of Allah after the Quran is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The one who rejects the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his teachings, his sunnah has rejected the greatest of the great signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the fact here. Allah.
Edip was the...
Hold on, this is my answer. Oh, you repeat the question.
It's your chance.
Repeat the question.
The question is, does the Prophet have any special powers?
Okay. Well, I like this gentleman. He said he didn't have special power, he didn't come with any mu'jizat, any signs, and I think that you say the Quran is only signs as the Quran says. They ask you to show signs the Quran says, say the signs in the hand of God isn't enough for you that the Quran gave it to you. Do you believe that or do you believe other?
So you're happy with that, yeah?
Yes.
Are you happy with the fact that I say, listen carefully everyone. Are you happy with the fact that I say that the Prophet ﷺ had no special powers?
Good, absolutely.
You're very happy with that?
Okay, beautiful.
I'll tell you why he's happy with that. Now,
because I believe in God, only one God.
Listen very carefully, okay? I'm going to remind you of something that I told you about an hour ago. Men like this and the ideas that they come with, which of course is not Islamic, of course, yeah. They are produced by a system. They are produced. Every man and woman, when they are saying things and doing things, they are a product of the society that they come out of. Because, you know, that's what you live in, your parents teach you things, you have experiences. Some women, they have such a bad experience with man, he might rape her, she hates men for the rest of her life. She was never kissed a man.
But you interrupted, I didn't answer.
Oh, sorry. I'll come back to this point. My apologies. Okay, sorry.
I don't reject the teaching of Muhammad, which is the Quran says it's the Quran alone. And I reject the teachings falsely attributed to Prophet Muhammad centuries later. That's very important by each time he wants to confuse Muhammad with Bukhari. The Quran says follow the messenger, who says he will complain about him that he didn't follow the Quran, not Quran and Sunnah. But he wants us to confuse Muhammad with Bukhari, Abu Hurairah, or other fictional names, some of them fictional. Now he says, according to Hadith, Prophet Muhammad always praised God, always put attention to God. Well, it's not true. According to Quran, yes.
But according to hadith, it's the opposite. Because there is one hadith says, don't be stingy, the stingy will go to hell. What's a stingy Prophet Muhammad? The stories tell that people can listen. He's a good storyteller. I am not a good storyteller. He tells good stories, people love it. Okay, what's a stingy Prophet Muhammad? Well, stingy is the one, when my name is mentioned, doesn't say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Is this the person who pulls attention to God or to himself and send a person to hell because they don't praise him after him? This gentleman many times says God, God. Rarely he says praise words, which Quran full of praises of God. All the beautiful names belong to God, the master of us and master of Muhammad. But he keeps praising Muhammad with this distortion of the meaning of Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It is another distortion. The Quran doesn't tell us to say in code, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It is an action, and when we put the verses talking about Salla ala, we find that the meaning means support. The people during the time of Prophet Muhammad was asked to support Muhammad. Muhammad was asked to support them. Salli alayhim, inna salataka sakanun lahum. Or God and His angels were salli ala us. Well, lazi yusalli alaykum wa malaikatuhu. It is God who does salah on you, who supports you, and His angels. Therefore, salli ala is not a praise word exclusive to Muhammad according to the Quran. In fact, it is an action, not words. Action to be done that Prophet Muhammad should have done Salli ala on his people, and those people should have done on him, and God does on all of them. He's supporting them.
Again,
but,
okay, please,
let me finish. Okay, I'm
Prophet have any special power?
30 seconds. Prophet Muhammad, according to the Quran, did not show any miracle except the Quran. This gentleman, by saying he did not have any miracle, he contradicted hundreds of hadiths in those 6 hadith books. I am glad to hear that. Thank you.
Just to clarify, the Prophet ﷺ was a man. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends miracles to whoever He wishes. So if He gave something miraculous upon the tongue or the action of the Prophet ﷺ, He did that. So if a miracle occurred and the Prophet ﷺ is involved, it is not from the Prophet ﷺ.
Oh,
this is very important. Okay, we don't worship the Prophet. Okay, we don't worship Eesa alayhi salam. Yet he was given miracles. He was given the greatest miracles.
Well, now the story changed. Okay, now
Just let him clarify what the miracle would be.
Is there a story change here, brothers and sisters? As I said to you here, and this is a very important point. When you're built up by a culture, when you're built up by your surroundings, you react to those situations. That's the norm of society. This is a man who has been brought up in a society. Believe me, I tasted it for 3 days and my head was hurting. Alright? People who believe the Prophet ﷺ knows the future. Prophet ﷺ knows everything. Prophet ﷺ is light. Prophet ﷺ is sitting here. They sit in a gathering, and they put an empty chair here, and they say the Prophet ﷺ is Harvard, one arm. He is here and he sees everything. Now let me tell you something. When you hear someone say something so stupid, when you hear someone say something so foolish, and you see people worshipping, what are you going to do? You're going to turn into like this man, you're going to react. And the reaction should be according to Islam. The reaction should be to find out who is the Prophet and let's revive his Sunnah. This reaction has gone from there out of the window. He said, right, forget it, throw everything out from the Prophet ﷺ, throw all the Sunnah out, throw all the Sahaba out, all of them. Kadhab this, liar that, Bukhari this, Bukhari that, whatever. This is the reaction of someone who is like this. And that's important to see. So that you understand why is a person like this who says, I'm Muslim, saying these things which have nothing to do with Islam. So I'm just telling you that so that you understand where the thought process comes from.
One quick response.
Not quick response. Okay, now he changed. He says now Muhammad showed some miracles by God's leave, absolutely. But the Quran says by God's leave, he didn't show any miracle, only the Quran. But let me tell you what miracles, according to his hadith book, he associates as a partner to the Quran. Again, hadith book that he associates as source besides God. According to these hadith books, Prophet Muhammad, the power of sexual power of 30 men. And he will ask me, where is the reference? The reference is there, we'll find it. If I am wrong, absolutely reject it. But you will check in hadith books. 30 men, according to those hadiths, he married about 9 of them. The question is, first of all, he's a superman. According to Quran, he was not a superman. قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ. Say, I am a human being like you. Well, a human being, I don't think anyone here has the power of 30 men. Well, 30 men? That he's a superman.
Speak for yourself.
Hold on, let me finish. And he had about 9 and a lot of sense of humor, but it's not really funny. Through this teacher's tradition, Muslim world suffered greatly in many ways. Therefore, I am upset, maybe angry. Because it's not small. In Iran, we saw in the name of these traditions, in this name of hearsay, how people suffering. In Afghanistan, how Taliban did. In Saudi Arabia, how they are doing. This gentleman's idea, if come, will be under a fascistic dictatorship. Okay, 30 mass power. Well, according to Hadith, he's married 9 women. Okay, well, 9 minus 30 is what? 21 sexual power left uncompensated, not met. Then what he was doing with 21 unsatisfied sexual power? This is a question for them. Miraj, we went to Miraj, God said 50 prayers. 50 prayers. They accused God of not knowing mathematics. 50 times of prayers, not 50 rak'ah, but 50 times. It means every 28 minutes, 1 time. Well, in the past, they didn't have watch like this. They could not even calculate. According to the Miraj hadith, please, which is, no, it is important, which is longest hadith in Bukhari. Prophet Muhammad in Miraj, but it's not off topic because he's showing power to negotiate with God. And God is saying 50 times, and that Prophet Muhammad from 7th heaven comes down to 6th heaven. Moses is there, thank God. Moses. Most of the hadiths fabricated, in fact, by a lot of Jewish rabbis later supposed to become Muslim, a lot of Christian borrowings. This is one of them. And Moses says, how many prayers? 50. Your ummah cannot do.
Okay, I think everybody's familiar with
Okay, let's go there. And then another one, he says, Muhammad is not Hazir and Nazir. Mashallah. But I ask him one question, let him answer. In your prayer, when you sit down like this, when you recite Fatiha, and not Fatiha, Tahiyya. Fatiha, you say, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Only to you we serve, only from you we ask for help. You talk to God, you declare that you are servant of God. But in Tahiyya, billions of Muslims recite this. التحيات لله والصلوات والطيبات السلام عليك أيها النبي. K, not alayhi. Pay attention. K means you. Peace be upon you, O Prophet Muhammad. If he says peace upon him, we say, okay, there's an interpretation. Though he mentions Prophet Muhammad in prayer, which prayer should belong to God alone. The observed prayer only to commemorate me, God says. But let's say he commemorated Muhammad but as a third person. But here, while standing, you say, God, I serve you alone, I ask help from you alone. You address God. God is in front of you, Hazir and Nazir, which God is. But when you sit down, you give up from that. You contradict that. You say, oh Prophet, God's peace be upon you. As a prophet, also hearing you as a second person. This is shirk. Are you committing this shirk or not in your prayer?
Respond.
Yeah. No. Yes or no, and then
I'll just let him respond.
Are you committing this shirk?
In all fairness, you had
Okay.
the floor now.
So what he's asking is that in the tashahhud, you know, when you're sitting down, you're saying, we can't say. So let's assume that we can't say that. What do you say then, sir? What should I say?
You should not say that at all. Not saying anything better than saying this shirk.
Okay, all right. So no salat.
Oh, say no. Say La ilaha illallah. Say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. That's better. Subhanallah. Say what's wrong with that?
Did you hear that?
Yes.
So what he wants you to do, everyone, when it's Dhuhr time, sit down, just say whatever comes into your mind.
Commemorate God. The Quran says commemorate God.
All right. How?
Remember God.
How many times?
Don't you know? God is great. Thank you, God, for your help. God guide you. You are praying in the Fatiha.
So you can see.
No, is this the issue? Listen. Are you saying Muhammad Hazar and Nazar in front of you, say, peace be upon you, Muhammad. A moment ago, you said Prophet Muhammad is not here, omnipresent, doesn't hear us. I was happy to hear that. But he is full of contradiction, that's the problem. And he's not able to see the contradiction. Because brain mess up when you read these books, accept it as a holy book, you will lose your logic, critical thinking. Here is my question again. In your prayer, do you say Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi, not alayhi?
I would go even further than his question. Not only do I say Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi. Not only do I say Assalamu alayka ala nabi, I say ayyuhan nabi. Alright? Which is even worse. Alright? Because ayyuhan nabi is when you call someone right there. So you make your argument stronger, make a good argument. Yeah? He only says Assalamu alayka. No, I'll say go further. I go worse. I do even bigger shirk. Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi, I say. But I know that the Prophet ﷺ is not in front of me. And I know that the Prophet ﷺ cannot hear me like this now. Because the Prophet ﷺ taught his companions to say it like that.
How do you know that he said that? How do you know?
Because I, alhamdulillah, believe in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ.
But many hadiths you do not believe, you reject many
But you
hadiths.
don't. So obviously we can't have this discussion. He asked me why. I said because I believe in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. I believe that the Prophet ﷺ taught his companions what to say. He said to Abdullah ibn Abbas and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he taught him one version. At-tayyibatu was-salamu alayka in one version. At-tayyibat, at-tahiyyat in another narration. Those who understand the hadith know that the companions are learning from the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet, what he's trying to say is that the Prophet ﷺ is teaching the companions shirk.
No. I say he did not do Bukhari, Muslim, Ibn Majah. 200 years later, they fabricate, as Christians fabricated about Jesus, they fabricate the hadith. It has nothing to do with Prophet Muhammad. You were not there, your father was not there, you are going back the books that you have a lot of problems with there.
Thank you. I think that'll...
I need to go to the restroom right now. I'm coming.